So, we're here tonight, end of an era, whether you've been here 7 years, 2 years, been a great run. Now, contrary to other years where they sort of just compile lists, give out awards, get people up and just sort of use them in general, we just thought we'd do it to more of a structure. So, we thought we'd leave you with something a little bit more lasting that other generations of the challenges can aspire to, something a bit more valuable than the Magna Carta. History. Saying something on the level of the US Constitution. Wait for it. Seems to be more famous than the Bill of Rights as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to present to you the Challenge Constitution, which is going to present the key principles that make up every good Challenge year, which I think we really are. So to start with, every Challenge year must use their academic qualities outside of Challenge itself. Now, in a very general sort of sense at this point, we're all, we're quite obsessed with our grammar, especially over Twitter. I think a lot of you are going to remember this particular incident. So it's nice to see how many retweets favourites got sarcastically. Jump on the bandwagon there, so flying that outside nicely.
And of course we have Tom Aldrin using his excellent physics knowledge to find the optimum leverage angle on his bicep curls. So stuff.
And finally we've got Nathan Buckley who uses his very good IT and electronic skills to hack my MySpace. after being paid £10 by Chris Hayes and Nathaniel Scott. They delete it off my friend. Anyway, but they're not always satisfied with the school itself. And so every Challenge year must abuse its school, but then defend it when others slate it.
Now, for the first half of this point, obviously, mocking your own school. Back to Twitter again, boys. You're going to remember challenge problems created by our very own Nate Stock. So we went over Twitter when we were planning this speech, and we thought we'd print screen and we'd throw up a couple of our favourites. We started off tame with Mr. Shield. Exciting chess matches, warranting a telling off from other teachers. Gets better. Just being really good at everything. Sorry, having to other teachers who are less than on schools. That's all.
You can't see the tweets on the screen.
The next example we've got of this, you have to forgive there is a 4-letter word in there, but we definitely think it's worth taking the risk in front of the teachers because this really is great.
So the first example we've got was Bucks Cup final, John Hammond, getting a bit loud over Twitter. Right, and then Remo, being his very imaginative, creative self, decided to reply to someone in very imaginative fashion.
Right. Similarly, the year before against DCGS, there's a lot of hype going on in the Facebook group. There is something us calling us posh, whatever, but this saw rise to lots of football songs that we made up, such as "We Got Your Caravans." Pretty popular as it went round. As we also mentioned,
Also, another example, again, once in football, is the Gibbs Cup final against Reading School. We weren't allowed to show it. Well, we're advised not to, but I think some people know.
Yeah, as we mentioned, it's going back to Easy Rigby and had shallow awards. We just thought we'd show a couple of responses we just got here. Good right this time, but nice one from top there. Cheers, mate. Despite sticking together, sort of over these public forums defending the school, we're actually torn apart inside the unit. Which is leading us on to our next point: is every Challenger's year must just be locked in eternal conflict with social initiative.
Okay, so many questions. Okay, many have questioned the official standings, but we've got them here tonight.
Oh Christ, it's going to be painful.
We're still cooler than all of you. Sorry, it's not the red flag cars getting the jocks at the top though, you really need that. We'll get to you.
Okay, so next up, we've got fertilisers, or also known as Ray Peak.
A more recent group,
James Hamilton.
And then it started to get a bit hard to, we couldn't really think of any more social groups, so we kind of put a more general one, which was lesser known social minorities.
Follow my touring.
So, as well as the social divisions amongst us, there are also class divisions, and those who know too much, for example, walking and talking encyclopedias such as Alex Peplow and Guy Fowler, and those who follow us by our one and only Van Duzer and notorious Amets with Ben Guggen and Admiral Carl.
We then have those who know too little. Well, I think we all know Michael Patch. Is usually quite hard, so 2 words we've done quite well.
We take a trip down memory lane and talking about a thirst for knowledge. A certain Bertie Hill. Now, very known for his 2 big questions when we were about year 8 and 9. The first one, when he asked Miss Rowett in a biology lesson what toast was. The second, when he asked Miss Albo in the English lesson, the cow's hide. we think he's got it right now. So as well as these people who know too little, we've got those who don't know right from wrong as well.
Right.
So we've got Michael Lacey getting the first ever yellow card. So congratulations, Michael.
We've got the Puff the Magic Adam incident.
We've got James Pickney, who's just notoriously in trouble since year 7.
And our own James Hamilton for, I mean, if we got the rap sheet out. Just leave it at that.
Yeah. And finally, I'd like to say a big welcome back to Adams Park for Ryanair. After a quite lengthy ban for an unfortunate incident with a steward. Anyway, so amongst the conflict, there's always someone who tries to surge to power. And so every Challenger's year must have a revolutionary.
He probably knows who he is. As we already mentioned, he's the one who created the Challengers Problems hashtag, so it's enough gratitude for that. But I'm sure many of you have been following the Occupy Longfield situation. And like I searched the Occupy Longfield hashtag and it's still, it's mainly Nate and I. No, it's the effort that counts. But who are these revolutionary figures fighting against who want for the establishment? So, every challenge the year must have teachers they'll never forget.
Teachers they will.
So firstly we've got Mr. Darcy, the old PE teacher.
Howard.
When Eddie Keaton broke his arm and proceeded to swear, Mr. Darcy's reaction was to tell him not to swear.
And obviously those of you who've been here since the start, Mr. Doubler was only with us for a year now. But I'm sure he's probably called most of the doormat. Or his controversial dirty fingers clean palm.
This one's more for year 8 Foxhall, but we all know Tom. I think Tom was in there. Also, how many of you remember when there was that killer loose in the field? Everyone, the whole year was scared, and then to add to that, the fire alarm went off. So this is when it started freaking out. So Tom left our geography lesson after having sent Tom Evans outside. Tom Evans is just waiting outside. So Tom's turned left, gone downstairs, fire alarm's going, and next thing you know, Tom sprints past the door frantically, and Tom's just there like, and he just, I don't think he came back for like the rest of the lesson, so that didn't really help with the whole scared thing, but...
One for noon, one time Mr. Keane showed out his kendo moves. All about my team's on. Everyone's on.
And then we've got Mr. Dobby and Mr. Healy. They're not only incredibly scary, but they are also incredibly meaty.
And obviously we'll have our one and only Mr. Kavanagh, who's always trying very hard to be a comedian, and we thank him for his own efforts.
There's Mr. Duggan as well. I'm probably going to find a way to relate the speech back to Woodby.
And of course we have, for English people, we have right-wing comments constantly made to Mr. Miller, who's back in But of course, not all the teachers can control the crime network, and so every calendar year must have a secret criminal underworld.
The days of selling are long past us, but there was a time when the economic climate challenge was controlled by two imposing figures. Total control, selling coke, no cherry drops, just do that.
And then we had the UFC Fight Club, which was established. I mean, the teachers never found out until Toby Foster and Ted Carlo were casually fighting on the floor when Mr. Amber Corson walked in. Stopped for a second, they stopped for a second, and then you just said, get out.
We know the UFC Fight Club takes the route from the flight of the page, which has identical as well, and many a good rate spent in that.
And finally, back in year 9, when the whole year thought that Nathan Rutley had weed in his locker, and it actually turned out to be tea bags. But crime at Dodge Chandler's isn't all that sweat the student body, and so every Chandler's year must have epidemics that rock the student body.
So probably fresh in your minds is the table football, the notorious table football, which made the likes of Alex Dewhurst late for the whole year.
And then there was, about year 9, the pocket ripping scandal. I think we've just about got over it now. That was very serious.
Probably the worst one was the bell tap scandal. I don't think you can ever be free from a bell tap.
And then, I mean, Sam Price, I remember him for this particular, the knuckles game with the coin to first blood in year 7. What were we thinking?
And finally, back in year 8, the heads and tails coin flipping game.
Oh, Christ.
You flip the coin, and if you guessed it right, you kept the money. Personally, for me, I lost a week's lunch money. And if you knew me back in year 8,
Jesus Christ.
That was a bit of a problem.
Anyway, as we became kings of the tarmac, sorry, the tennis courts in year 7 and 8, we ventured onto the tarmac. We were just met with a whole new world, you know, alcohol parties under the influence of those people like Tom Hargreaves after the year.
Right.
But amidst the drunken chaos, academic success was still at the forefront of our minds. And so every child this year must try to meet the demanding academic requirements whilst flourishing socially.
Now, we've got 2 quite good examples of this one. We'll just whack them up. Now, I'll take you back to last November, or October. It was late October. We were around Christian's house for his birthday. We've had a sustained drinking session. Sam is very drunk. Now, he's got home and he's texted me and he's realised that he's got an essay overdue from Mr. Miller this morning. Now, if you know Mr. Miller, it was never really an option to not do the essay. So Sam has stayed up late writing this drunken essay, and he's handed it in a week later. No word of a lie. Highest mark of the year.
Next up, we have Ollie May. Now, at a party at the George, Ollie was a little drunk. Ollie found himself on his knees in the toilet, being sick, and when the bouncer walked in, just to check on him, the thing that was at the forefront of Ollie's mind was telling the bouncer that he had an Oxford interview in 3 minutes. But nobody can withstand this juggling act forever, and so every challenge year must have people who eventually snap under the academic pressure.
Now, it happened to some of us earlier than others. Like that time, Harry Berryman stabbed Ted in the leg with a stick.
We then have myself and Max Wabowski, who fought over a match attacks card. Not sure why.
Now, you'll remember this, when we used to have that game on tennis courts where we'd get on one side of the fence and the Republic on the other side, and we'd just charge each other. And James Hamilton.
Oh my God! Oh no!
Come out with the right idea of when, sort of mid-flight, people running through, he'll just pull down the wire. And he's taking Craig Bailey's head off. And Craig's unconscious on the floor, and James has just taken him to make sure and said, "I fell over."
Next we've got Nathan and Remo.
Oh, Christ!
Nathan was very troublesome in the lower years. He somehow turned it around in time, but for some reason, he was chasing Rem around the whole tennis court. And at one point, he actually leapfrogged the tennis nets and made a jump at Remo. So he wasn't happy for some reason.
And our personal favourite when we got these stories together is a man not often known for his competitive nature, Mark Roberts. That time that, I don't know, it might be king of the court or something, Dan Poulter happened to have got his little toe just across the court line. Mark was taking a swing at him. And somehow got away with it.
And finally, GCSE history, it was a must-be day. And Rob Rose is sitting behind Felix Parkovich. And Felix has got a leather jacket on. So Rob is asking him, "Where's your Harley Davidson? Where have you parked your Harley?" So I'll give it to him. Felix was taking it very well. Wasn't saying much, kept facing forwards, and then he just snapped. middle of the lesson, stood up, turned around, and squared up to Rob. And Rob still asked where his Harley was.
Amidst all this pressure, sometimes you just got to get away from it all. So every challenge year must make their marks on trips abroad.
Sometimes this comes in the form of romance. And the very first person was actually Andy Thompson. So, for those of you who weren't there, in France, we were all on the beach and there was a girls' school there, and we were showing usual interest, and there was one very attractive girl, of which Andy Thompson declared he loved. So, before speaking to her or anything, Andy Thompson loved this girl. So, the whole of our school, they carried him down the beach, raised in the air, to put him in front of the girl so he could actually talk to her for the first time.
Now, Berryman, a man known for his work on the international love scene, after bouncing back from the disappointment of the German exchange, he's fallen in line with the French exchange before the shocking events of deadline day, where Massimo's nicked on the last night.
Talking about the French exchange, my mate Jamie's hiding a bit down there. Hi Jamie. But Jamie fell in love with his French exchange. And she invited him to go skiing. And he took me, he said, "Do I want to?" I said, "Okay." And all it really turned into was we'd go on the skiing slopes, Claudia would go at the front, that's his French exchange, and Jamie would chase her down the slope. Like, that was the only reason, and he couldn't even control himself. He fell over pretty bad, and it was purely because he was trying to keep up with her.
But then sometimes, you know, these trips involve sporting activities. Now, who can forget the first night too long on those floodlights where I've been knocked out, it just turned into a scene at a fight club.
Next, we have the bottle of urine. On the urine. Now, it's still unclear whether it was James or Ryan. But somehow a bottle of piss ended up on a balcony, and Mr. Ambrose found it. So they got banned from the matches for the rest of the week.
And then definitely my personal favourite, Utah ski trip in year 10. Now, we've got into the habit of playing Pretty Fisher's Would You Rathers at the back of the coach.
Oh, God.
And Christian Quinn raised his voice a bit too loud. We won't be too explicit, but it involved ducks and swans and bottoms. Mr. Simmons heard him somehow, and his imposing figure's just risen at the top of the bus. He said, "First thing tonight." We were just mortified for the rest of the day.
And finally, we've got getting pissed in Portugal on the football tour. We were taking advantage of the lower drinking age, went in the bar with the teachers. I'm not sure, they kind of lost track. And then they went to bed, and we actually just spent the whole time running around the campus and actually inquired about a taxi to the local town. So I don't think they know about that, but we would have invited you, Mr. Denver, but you've gone to bed. Okay. But throughout these journeys, some were left behind. And so every challenge year must have soldiers that we've lost along the way.
Dan Zenedine.
Tom Edmonds.
Alex Schweil.
Ollie Kingsley.
Charlie Duff-Sutton.
James Bentley.
Matt Walton.
Jamie Wise.
Ernie Mann.
Phil Edwards. Callum Beaver.
Henry Bertie, Albert Martin.
And Brianna Tanya.
That's what he said. So good I said that.
And with every end comes an inevitable beginning. So every challenge year must have people who establish themselves quickly.
Now,
Luke on.
Matt Yebsley, I didn't actually like Matt when he first came. Because he was just too chirpy for a new kid. But we knew he was a keeper when he came in after his first Chandler's house party, and he's just bragging and bragging. I met this girl called G Hill.
Of course, Ashwin made his name as DJ Equinox pretty quickly.
Can we not forget that Henriette made a bin that wasn't a bin? And Henriette also, when we went to Ashridge School for, the school officials went for kind of a training day, and Henry met the head girl of Oxford. Henry had a good idea. They were having a little chat, and they thought, let's make a Facebook group. So they made a Facebook group, and it pretty much turned into Henry flirting with the butcher and everyone liking his comments.
And last but by no means least, Greg. Forcing his words, Tex, and his nickname, the Tex Man, formed the whole student body. In fact, it's actually the first thing he said about himself. Mrs. Whitley said, stand up, say something about yourself. He just said, get your Tex about. And he never looked back. But Greg, the Tex Man Hayward, and Ashwin, DJ Equinox Sharma are the only people in the student body notorious for their nicknames. So, we've got every challenge this year must. Avid Sharon stuff.
Got Guy Guzzler Fowler,
Ollie Muffin May,
Charlie Schneebs in the vocal.
Christoph Swiss Rick Rona,
James or Josh Howard, Melon.
Simon Pyro Shaw,
and we've already mentioned him and we all know him from Facebook, Aaron UTR Harker.
But some people actually forget his apprentice, Mike UTR Khan.